Hi, we are continuing with questions 22 and 23 here in section 4 of SAT Practice Test 1. So here we see a pretty large table with a lot of different kind of values. We have years here, different kinds of programs here, and then it says at the top annual budgets for different programs in Kansas across these years. So these are going to be dollar amounts, and below the table it says that these are in thousands of dollars. So it's helpful whenever you're going to dive into some questions that are going to refer you back to a figure or table, just to at least briefly look at the figure or table and make sure you have a general understanding of what kind of information is there. So now that we have an overview, let's take a look at question 22. Which of the following best approximates the average rate of change in the annual budget for agriculture, natural resources in Kansas from 2008 to 2010? Okay, so for this question, they mention agriculture and natural resources, and we're talking about from 2008 to 2010. So let's see what that change in annual budget was over that span of time. And if we look at our answer choices here, it shows that they're all these perfectly even numbers, and it says best approximates. So that lets us know that we can use a little bit of rounding here. Even though this is the calculator section, we can still save a few seconds by not having to work it out to the exact dollar value. But we can use a little bit of rounding. So here from 2008, where it looks like we were at 358, and remember, this is in thousands, so you would actually add 3 zeros onto that, 358 million approximately in 2008, and I'll just add on the zeros here so we can see them. And in 2010, it's about 488 million. But let's use rounding to our advantage to make the calculation easy. Let's do 488 minus 358, which comes out to be a difference of 130. And so a lot of people would find that difference, and they would come down here and go, all right, 488 minus 358 equals 130, and then they would pick D as their answer. But we want to be careful, because if we look at what the question's asking, they want the average rate of change across those 2 years. So remember, for average, you take the sum of terms, and you have to divide by the number of terms that there are. In this case, it's a total difference in annual budget of 130 million, but that's over a 2-year span, and the question is asking for us to calculate it per year. So we have a second calculation here where we have to do 130 over 2 to get the per year amount, and that would be 65 million per year, which is answer choice B for 22. Now let's move on over and take a look at 23, which again pertains to this same table of information. So make sure that we keep that in mind as we look at 23, which reads, of the following, which program's ratio of its 2007 budget to its 2010 budget is closest to the human resources program's ratio of its 2007 budget to its 2010 budget? So the most important thing here is for us to recognize that when you're talking about a ratio, when you have the ratio of one thing to another, we want to look at it as a fraction and make sure we know which one goes on top or which one would go on bottom in our denominator. So when you have the ratio of A to B, for example, let me write that out a little more clearly here, that would be like saying A over B. So here, they're asking us to compare the human resources program's ratio in 2007 over 2010. So let's check the human resources one first. So we'll put that down here because we're going to look for whichever answer choice gets us closest to that. So for human resources, here's our 2007 amount, and here's our 2010 amount. And so we have, it looks like it's roughly going to be 4 million to 6 million. And then with the zeros, it would end up actually being in billions, 4 billion to 6 billion once we add on those zeros. But we can also do it exactly if we wanted to, since it is calculator section. And since we don't know how close the other ones are going to be, we don't have any answer choices to let us know how much rounding is appropriate the way we did in question 22. So here I would probably just type this into my calculator exactly as is, just to make sure that I don't accidentally round too aggressively and potentially miss a question that I could have had if I had used my calculator. So I would recommend using calculator here, and if you type in these amounts exactly, we will get a ratio of 0.684. All right, so we are looking for something else that has a ratio that is closest to, again, it does not have to be exact, it's closest to that ratio of 0.684. And so for this, I'm not going to write out every single number, but I'll point them out as we go. So for agriculture and natural resources, we are going to, and let me get rid of the notes from question 22 here, just so we can see. We're going to put this number over this number, 373,904 over 488,106, and that gives us 0.766. Doesn't seem like that's that close, but we don't know yet. Let's keep going because it says closest to. We don't know how close each answer choice is going to be until we do them all. So here we'd have 2,164,607 over 3,008,036. And that gives us a ratio of 0.719, so even closer. All right, highways and transportation. Let's compare those two numbers. And the reason that you don't have to worry about adding the 3 zeros on the end, even though the table, as we mentioned, is in thousands of dollars, but we don't have to add those extra zeros because as a ratio, if you add the zeros on the end and put it over another number with the same number of zeros on the end, those zeros are going to cancel out either way. So in case you're wondering, you don't have to add on those zeros. You could, and it's not going to give you an incorrect answer if you do, but it helps save a little time and add to a little simplicity when we go to plug those in. This one would give us a ratio of 0.827. And lastly, for public safety, we're going to do 263,463 over 464,233, and that comes out to 0.567. So of all of those, the one that's closest to this ratio of 0.684 is going to be answer choice B for 23. Stay tuned in our next video and we'll continue.